Well, good evening, everyone. My name's Siena Parr. I am from Dolores High School, and my Pintern internship this summer was in neuroscience at Scripps Research. You'll hear a bunch from neuroscience kids today, but we all worked for 6 weeks in between June and July in Southern California. We worked at the Doris Neuroscience Center, which is on the Scripps Medical Campus in La Jolla, California. La Jolla is about, I want to say, a 25-minute drive from downtown San Diego at 4 a.m. on a Tuesday. Any other time, you're going to be stuck in traffic. But it's also home to the University of California, San Diego, which is right next to where I worked. More specifically, I worked in the Gyn lab at the Doris Neuroscience Center. There's a whole bunch of different labs there, and while they are all neuroscience labs, they all specialize in something a little bit different. These are the main people I worked with while I was there. Shinjin was the head of my lab, and then Cassie White was my main mentor while I was there. Okay, so most of the projects in the Gyn lab focused on, it said on the website, decoding the human genome with an emphasis in targeting specific sections of the genome that code for neurological disorders. So these can be things like autism spectrum disorder, epilepsy, cerebral palsy, etc. Unfortunately, I can't get too into specifics. I had to sign an NDA, so if I told you, I'd have to kill you. So this is going to be a little bit vague, but I found while I was there that lab members spend a majority of their time trying to amplify the quality and quantity of DNA sections that they have. So that's mostly what I did while I was there. These are a few of the procedures that I did while I was there. The PCR is basically just a kind of complicated way of speeding up your DNA replication process so you can have amplified DNA quicker. And then your gel running and imaging usually goes along with the PCR, but will result in these bands that you can see right here, which will tell you what kind of DNA you have and if you did your PCR correctly. And then these two I did later on in my time at Scripps. Sometimes the DNA that you run on a gel is so precious and you feel like you need to save it. So you can cut out the bands that you see and you can extract them from the agarose to save the DNA. And then cell splitting, researchers like to keep plates of cells called cell cultures that they can experiment on. And when they aren't experimenting on them, they're constantly growing and they need to be split. So you take cells from the original plate and put it in a new plate in the TC hood so your cells can continue to grow and live. And then I got to do a bunch of fun things outside the lab. I lived with another Pintern, Katie. We commuted together on the freeway every day. I was the driver. That was really scary. But we also lived with a host family who you heard a little bit about. We had a host mom, a host dad. We lived with their 2 teenage sons, their family dog, family cat, and they also fostered a group of kittens while we were there. So it was really fun, but we had a full house for sure. I was glad I took my allergy medicine with me. But when we weren't at work or when we weren't at home, we were exploring the San Diego area. We went all over the place. We went to the zoo, all the little beaches, the botanical gardens, and pretty much anywhere we could find. There were also about 10 miles of trails out behind the house where I lived in, and I would go on runs in the morning or go on walks in the afternoon, and it was a really nice way to spend my time. So here's my advice to any prospective interns in the audience. Come to presentation night. You've got that one down. Good job. Be willing to be flexible. You're not always going to know where you're going to go, and if you're flexible to make it a lot easier. This is scary, but be prepared to be completely alone or with people you've never met before. I didn't know any of the people who I lived with for 6 weeks, and it turned out really great. And then stay on top of your communications. Don't waste your time because you actually don't get that much, even though you'll think that you do. And then take a step back every once in a while and be proud of yourself, because moving somewhere new without your family at 16 or 17 is not easy and deserves a little pride. So thank you to all of these incredible people who made my journey possible.